Welcome back to ZE Coins. Today, we are diving deep into the fascinating story of the United States of America 1982 mint mark Lincoln 1-cent penny, how it came into existence, how to identify the different varieties, why this particular year is so important, and what makes certain examples valuable. This is not just a casual glance. This is the full story behind one of the most interesting modern pennies ever created by the US Mint. So sit back, because we're about to uncover one of America's most puzzling and collectible coin years. 1982. Why 1982 was a turning point? The year 1982 stands out in the coin collecting world because it marked a major transformation in the composition of the penny. Before 1982, Lincoln cents were made primarily of copper, 95% copper and 5% zinc. But copper prices were rising sharply, and it soon became more expensive to manufacture the penny than the penny was worth. Producing a 1-cent coin for more than 1 cent simply didn't make sense. So the US Mint had a big decision to make. Instead of continuing to produce copper coins, they switched mid-year to a new composition, 97.5% zinc with a thin outer layer of copper. These new zinc-based cents were significantly cheaper to make. But here's where things get interesting. The mint didn't just switch from copper to zinc. They also produced both large date and small date versions in both compositions. That means there are several varieties of 1982 pennies, some copper, some zinc, some with large date numerals, some with smaller numerals. Add in different mint locations and the fact that this change happened mid-production, and suddenly collectors have a puzzle with multiple possible combinations to sort through. This unusual transition makes 1982 an exciting challenge for coin lovers, and it makes certain varieties more desirable and worth more than others. Copper versus zinc. How to tell the difference? One of the biggest questions collectors ask is how to identify whether a 1982 penny is copper or zinc. Luckily, there's a simple test that doesn't require special equipment. A copper penny weighs about 3.11 grams. A zinc penny weighs about 2.5 grams. So if you have a digital scale, identifying the metal composition is easy. Even a small weight difference matters when determining the coin's potential value. Another trick is the sound test. When dropped gently on a table, a copper penny makes a higher, ringing sound, while a zinc penny makes a duller, softer sound. It isn't as accurate as using a scale, but it can help when you don't have equipment available. Knowing the composition is crucial because certain varieties, especially those accidentally struck in copper when they shouldn't have been, can command exceptional collector interest. Large date versus small date feature differences. Besides the metal composition, collectors pay attention to differences in the design. The 1982 penny came in 2 date sizes, large date and small date. The shapes of the numerals differ subtly, and being able to spot the difference can make or break identifying a valuable variety. On the large date, the 8 appears fuller and rounder, with the top loop bigger. The small date, 8, looks more delicate and evenly balanced. The number 2 in the small date version often appears sharper and more curved. The large date has a more prominent 2 with a thicker tail. These distinctions take practice, but once you've trained your eyes, you'll spot the differences quickly. Mint mark importance. The 1982 penny came from 2 main locations, Philadelphia and Denver. Philadelphia coins have no mint mark, while Denver coins display a clear D beneath the date. While both mints produced copper and zinc varieties, certain combinations were produced in much smaller numbers, making them much more desirable today. Denver is particularly interesting because some of the rarest known 1982 pennies come from the Denver Mint. This includes one of the most famous modern penny errors, an extremely rare small-date copper penny struck at the Denver Mint when it should have been zinc. Coins like that have sold for very high amounts at auction because of their accidental nature and extremely limited quantity. Why collectors love 1982 pennies? Collectors appreciate 1982 pennies because they represent a historical shift in American coinage. Anytime there's a major change, collectors pay attention. But 1982 was more than just a single change. It was a swirl of overlapping varieties, misprints, metal transitions, and mint experiments. Copper pennies, zinc pennies, small date versions, large date versions, coins from Philadelphia, coins from Denver era varieties that appeared accidentally. 8 major varieties exist, and when error coins or mint mishaps are added into the mix, the number grows even more. This mix of variations, combined with the ease of finding these pennies in circulation, makes searching for 1982 cents exciting. Anyone can take a look through pocket change or a jar of coins and potentially find something valuable. How condition affects value. Even if you identify a rare variety, the value of a coin always depends on its condition. Factors like scratches, discoloration, corrosion, and wear all impact final pricing. Coins in mint state condition, those with sharp details and no wear, fetch the highest values. Collectors use a grading scale ranging from puer, P, to mint state, MS. Coins graded MS60 and higher are significantly more desirable. A 1982 penny in perfect or near-perfect mint condition can be worth far more than one that has been heavily circulated. Professional grading companies like PCGS and NGC can certify condition, but even without certification, collectors can often make good judgments by examining the luster, details, and edges of the coin. Why the 1982 penny still captures attention today. Most pennies minted after 1982 are incredibly common. Modern pennies rarely attract much collector interest unless they contain rare errors. But the 1982 penny stands in its own category. Because it represents the turning point between copper and zinc, it still draws attention even decades later. Rare copper small date 1982 D pennies mint state examples of all 8 major varieties. Errors like off-center strikes or doubled dies. Pennies that accidentally used incorrect metal planchets. Even beginners enjoy searching for 1982 pennies because they are still so accessible. Unlike older pennies that are hard to find in circulation, 1982 coins appear fairly often. And every time one turns up, it could be part of a rare variety. Final thoughts. The 1982 Lincoln penny is a perfect example of how history, economics, craftsmanship, and chance collide to create collectibles that spark curiosity. What seems like the simplest, smallest piece of money becomes a window into a moment when the U.S. Mint had to rethink one of its most iconic coins. Whether you're a seasoned collector or someone curious about coins, the 1982 penny is a beautiful reminder that even everyday objects can hold hidden stories and unexpected value. So next time you spot a penny dated 1982, don't ignore it. Don't toss it aside. Pick it up, look at it closely, weigh it if you can, and check the date style. You might be holding a treasure that belongs in a collector's showcase. We talk about the year 1984, something particularly interesting begins to unfold. Because the 1984 Lincoln penny has a fascinating background that many people overlook when they first come across it. Imagine holding a coin in your hand that millions of people have handled, spent, dropped, saved, or even forgotten about in drawers, jars, and pockets. Most people see a penny as something small, almost insignificant. Yet once you start learning about its design, its mint marks, its composition, and the rare errors produced during certain years, you quickly discover that pennies can sometimes be worth far more than their face value. And among those hidden treasures, the 1984 penny stands out as a great example of how a coin that seems so ordinary can actually become an exciting discovery for collectors around the world. To understand the value and appeal of the Lincoln penny, we need to travel back a bit in history. The Lincoln 1-cent coin was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Designed by Victor David Brenner, the obverse of the coin features the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln, while the reverse originally displayed wheat ears, often referred to as the wheat penny. This design ran until 1958, when it was replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse, which remained in production for decades, including the year 1984. So when you look at a 1984 penny, you are holding a piece of that long-running era in your very hand. But the year 1984 was not just another production year. It was a time when the minting process created some unusual variations, especially in relation to certain doubling errors that make the 1984 penny extremely interesting to collectors. The most famous of these is known as the 1984 doubled ear variety. If you look closely at Abraham Lincoln's ear on certain pennies dated 1984, you can see a clear doubling effect, almost as if there is a second ear behind his primary ear. This is not a trick of light, nor is it damage from circulation. It is a true double die error, caused during the production process when the design elements were improperly impressed on the die that would strike the coins. Collectors love double die coins because they represent mistakes made during manufacturing, mistakes that were never intended to leave the mint. In the world of numismatics, these kinds of errors become treasures because they are limited, they are unique, and they are often visually striking. The 1984 double-deer penny is one of those errors that collectors search for constantly. Most people who handle these coins daily have no idea such a variation exists, which makes finding one feel like discovering hidden treasure in plain sight. But the value of a coin does not depend only on errors. Another important detail that collectors always pay attention to is the mint mark. A mint mark is a tiny letter indicating where the coin was produced. For example, a D indicates the Denver Mint, while coins without a mint mark usually come from Philadelphia. In 1984, pennies were produced at both locations, but most examples you encounter will be the common circulation strike. Even though millions of them exist, coins that have survived in pristine, untouched condition, especially ones with errors, can sell for far more than you would ever expect. Mint marks matter because different mints can produce different varieties, different quality levels, and unique errors. For example, if you find a 1984 penny with no mint mark and it has a doubled ear, you may have something that collectors are actively willing to pay for. If that same coin is an exceptional grade, meaning it has very little wear and retains its original shine, then the value increases dramatically. Some of these pieces have been known to sell for impressive amounts when graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC. Now let us talk a bit about condition, because when it comes to coin collecting, condition changes everything. A coin that has spent years rattling around in pockets or lying in the bottom of a jar will show signs of wear, scratches, dull surfaces, and faded details. But a coin that has been carefully preserved from the moment it left the mint, one that still shows sharp lines and full luster, can command significant value. When combined with a rare error, this can lead to surprising prices at auctions or private sales. Collectors rate coins on a numerical scale from 1 to 70, known as the Sheldon scale. A grade of 1 means the coin is barely identifiable due to heavy wear, while a grade of 70 represents a perfect coin with no imperfections visible even under magnification. Most pennies that you find in circulation will fall somewhere in the lower or middle portions of the scale. However, if you find a coin that is both rare and high grade, it can easily attract serious attention from collectors. Another factor that affects the value of the 1984 penny is the material used in its production. Before 1982, pennies were made primarily of copper, giving them a higher intrinsic metal value. But starting in 1982, the composition changed to a zinc core with a thin copper coating. This means that the 1984 penny is part of the newer zinc-based era. These coins are lighter and more prone to environmental damage, which makes finding well-preserved examples even more exciting. Because zinc pennies can corrode or bubble over time, collectors especially appreciate pieces that have survived in untouched condition. Let us imagine you are searching through your change and you come across a penny dated 1984. The first thing you would want to do is examine it closely under good lighting. Look at Lincoln's ear to see whether you notice any doubling. Check the mint mark area to see if there is a D, or if the coin has no mint mark at all. If the coin looks unusual or has sharp details, it might be worth setting aside for further inspection. This is exactly how many collectors begin their journey, by paying attention to coins that most other people never look at twice. Even though millions of 1984 pennies were made, only a very small percentage contain rare errors, and an even smaller percentage remain in near-perfect condition today. That combination of rarity and quality is what makes some of these coins valuable. And when a coin has both a doubling error and strong eye appeal, its price can rise much higher than its face value. The coin community loves coins like the 1984 double-deer penny because they represent the perfect blend of history, minting technology, and happy accident. They inspire collectors to keep searching, to keep learning, and to appreciate the artistry and craftsmanship behind even the smallest pieces of currency. What seems like a common penny becomes something special once you understand what makes it unique. So, when we talk about the value of the 1984 mint mark 1-cent Lincoln penny, especially versions with known errors or rare conditions, we are talking about a coin that captures the imagination of collectors. It is not just about metal or age, it is about the thrill of discovery, the excitement of uncovering something that others might overlook, and the satisfaction of holding a tiny piece of American history in your hand. Today, we're diving deep into the remarkable story of the United States of America 2000 mint mark 1-cent Lincoln penny, a coin that many people overlook, but collectors around the world are hunting for with growing excitement. This penny, minted at the turn of a new millennium, represents more than just 1 cent of currency value. It symbolizes the crossover from the 20th century into the 21st, bridging eras of American culture, economics, politics, and craftsmanship. And although billions were minted, not all pennies are created equal. Some are special, rare even. And those rare ones can fetch surprising prices in auctions and collector markets. Let's begin our journey with the design. This penny proudly carries the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse. The bust, designed by Victor David Brenner, has appeared on the Lincoln cent since 1909. By the year 2000, the design had already been in circulation for over 90 years, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in United States mint history. The image of Lincoln isn't just a reminder of the 16th president, it's a connection to the legacy of freedom, determination, and resilience that the nation has built upon. Turning the coin over reveals the Lincoln Memorial, a solemn symbol of American honor and remembrance. Every column, every shadow, and every intricate detail in the architecture is captured with precision. Even in such a small format, the artistry stands out. If you look closely enough, especially with a magnifying glass, you can even spot the tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. That level of detail speaks to the craftsmanship of the minting process. But beyond the artistry is the mint mark, which plays a crucial role in determining rarity and value. The 2000 Lincoln penny was produced at several mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The mint mark, usually a small letter under the date, tells us where it was created. For collectors, that little letter can be the difference between a penny worth face value and a penny worth much more. Some mint marks are produced in larger quantities, while others are scarcer and therefore more desirable. But quantity doesn't always determine rarity. Condition does. A coin that has been in circulation for years may show scratches, discoloration, and wear, but a coin preserved in crisp, near-perfect condition is like a time capsule. Collectors grade these coins on a scale, with mint state grades receiving the highest admiration and value. A 2000 mint mark penny that appears untouched, sharp edges, glowing surface, no fingerprints, no scratches, can stand out dramatically from the billions that pass through cash registers and pockets over the years. And this is where things get interesting. Some coins from this year have particular characteristics, variations, errors, unusual strikes, that dramatically increase their collector value. Errors can include doubled dies, where the design appears duplicated, off-center strikes, where the stamping is shifted, or die cracks, where a small raised line appears on the surface. These mistakes turn ordinary coins into unique pieces, each with its own personality and story. With collectors, uniqueness is gold, even if the coin itself is copper. Imagine yourself at a flea market, a garage sale, or an antique shop. You sift through a handful of coins that someone has tossed into a jar, thinking they're nothing special. But as you examine them more closely, you spot the year 2000, the familiar profile of Lincoln, and a mint mark that looks promising. You take a closer look, there's something different about it. Maybe the lettering looks slightly doubled, or the surface has an unusual shine. Suddenly, that penny is no longer just loose change. It becomes a discovery, an opportunity, a treasure. Collectors around the world love stories like these, moments when everyday people find hidden value in ordinary places. It's part of the magic of coin collecting. It transforms the simple act of paying attention into a rewarding adventure. It turns a humble penny into a piece of excitement, a conversation starter, and sometimes, a surprisingly valuable asset. But why do collectors care so much about a coin made in the year 2000? Partly because it sits at the threshold of modern coin production, modern metallurgy, modern minting technology, and modern historical significance. It's not ancient, but it's not brand new either. It's right at that perfect age where collectors start paying attention. Coins become more interesting as they inch beyond 20 years of age, especially when they represent a turning point in time. Additionally, these pennies mark the final years before major design changes. In 2009, the Lincoln cent celebrated its 100th anniversary with an entirely new series of reverse designs commemorating different moments in Lincoln's life. After that, the reverse design changed again. That means the 2000 penny belongs to the last era of the original Lincoln Memorial design. This boosts its nostalgia value and desirability, especially among collectors who appreciate historical continuity. But the story doesn't end there. The material itself is noteworthy. While people often think of pennies as pure copper, modern pennies, including the one from the year 2000, are actually made primarily of zinc with only a thin copper coating. This transition began in the 1980s, and while it didn't change the outward appearance, it did change the inner structure. The lighter zinc core can sometimes cause striking anomalies or wear patterns, leading to interesting varieties that collectors love to examine. Now imagine we take this coin out into the sunlight. Watch how the copper coating glows with warm, reddish brightness. Tilt it from side to side, and you'll see how the texture reflects the light. Every ridge, every letter, and every detail shifts with subtle brilliance. That's the beauty of a well-preserved coin. It becomes more than metal. It becomes a miniature piece of art, and then comes the moment of truth. The moment collectors wait for. When a rare mint mark, a pristine condition, or a fascinating heir variety is confirmed, the value of the penny increases significantly. In coin collecting, it's not about size. It's about significance. The tiniest change can make the biggest difference. And that difference can turn a 1-cent piece into something worth far more. But of all the many values, estimated prices, and auction results associated with these coins, today we highlight one special figure. A figure that represents a high level of desirability for the 2000 mint mark 1-cent Lincoln penny in strong collectible condition. And as promised, we will mention that value only at the end, spelled out clearly, without brackets. So now, at the conclusion of our exploration, after understanding the history, the design, the meaning, the variations, the rarity, the collector demands, and the fascinating journey of this humble yet remarkable coin, here is the carefully noted price.